Welcome to Courtney on Health, brought to you on MalcolmPresents.com, a streaming service producing its own shows. All shows are on demand and archived. Good morning, guys.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Good
Good
afternoon. Good
evening.
morning.
We'll make people not know what time it really is. That's okay. It's our time to do the show.
It's
Bring
showtime.
That's from now on. That's what we're gonna say.
It's showtime.
Forget what time it is. It's showtime.
That's right.
So hi, Courtney, and hi, Malcolm.
Hello.
Welcome to Courtney on Health, a Zoomcast podcast series which focuses on one's overall well-being, with tips on nutrition, exercise, given by Courtney Gravenese, a registered dietitian with a Master of Science degree in nutrition and applied physiology. Courtney is an experienced nutritional and health consultant in the New York metro area and beyond. We never know how far beyond we go, but it's pretty far. And she will help guide you on a path to wellness and health. We all need to be healthy and well in this crazy world. So this topic, I'll just go right to it.
Right to the kernel.
Right to it. There was a reported rise in urinary tract infections, which are UTIs, during the pandemic. And this was online, as stress was high and proper hygiene and diet were not something people much cared about, especially during those lockdown days. People were like, just totally, I don't know what to do with myself. They were a mess. The sales of jogging pants and sweats went up too. So people just were, and pajamas. Anyway, UTIs are caused by a foreign bacteria entering the urinary tract, usually from the bowel. This is great. This is stuff, I'll tell you. And infections can happen to both men and women, but women seem to be more prone than men to this. Maybe Courtney will give us a little bit about that.
We're taking it in the shorts, Maxine, literally.
Taking it in the shorts. In fact, about 60% of women and 12% of men will have at least one UTI in their lifetime. If you've ever had one, you will recognize the symptoms immediately. It's kind of like you get this burning sensation. You get some cramping, you got to go to the bathroom a lot, the other things that go with it, which Courtney will explain later, and you feel not really quite able to empty your bladder, so it's really annoying and frustrating, and if they happen to you, often you need to do something about it. So while the standard treatment for UTI is pretty commonplace, an antibiotic usually clears it up in a few days, many people avoid seeing a doctor and don't get the proper diagnosis and antibiotic prescription, as they think they can self-treat, or it will go away by itself. Something always pops up when you think you have a UTI, and that's drinking cranberry juice. It seems to be coming together, or taking supplements, cranberry supplements. One prominent theory is that a substance in cranberries called proanthocyanidins, I don't know if I got that.
Can you spell that, please?
Please. Might help prevent UTI-causing bacteria from sticking to the walls of the bladder and other urinary tract linings. So while you mostly think of cranberries as a delicious Thanksgiving side dish, should we be giving thanks to cranberries when we get a UTI? Wow, I know Courtney will give us some great info about that, on how you deal with UTIs and if cranberries can help.
You'll never take cranberries again without that thought.
Yeah, I know. I figured I'd throw.
Right,
I don't know why. That you're welcome anytime. But anyway, so Courtney, start us off. What do we need to get into first?
Sure. So you touched on it a little bit, but urinary tract infections, we're just going to, abbreviate it UTI. Most everybody is familiar. If they have not had the diagnosis themselves, they have certainly heard of it. And you are correct. It's more common in women. So 60% of women at some point during their sort of late teens up to 70s will have had at least one episode of a UTI. The percentages are much lower in men. It's about 12%. And so a couple of reasons for that. There's a much shorter roadway between, and length of the urethra is much shorter in women than it is in men. So if you think about the ability for contaminated substances to get directly into the urethra, it's easier in women than it is in men. So that's one reason. The other reason, although all women who get UTIs are not perimenopausal, menopausal, or postmenopausal, we know that at any point during perimenopause and postmenopause, there are significant pH changes, the hormonal shifts, pH changes, and that pH change can exacerbate either if you have it or your prevalence, your incidence of getting it. So a couple of things going on there in terms of, why women may get it more frequently than men.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, the symptoms that you mentioned are very common. So that burning, I think the inability to void completely is a very, very common one as well. So what I really want to talk about with regard to the cranberry, because I feel like, and it's been around for years, but I really want to make the distinction. First of all, we're going to comb through sort of, really the research to date and really make the distinction between its role in prevention as opposed to its role in being a quote unquote treatment for it, because there's a difference in terms of what would be recommended.
I do just one question.
Yeah.
The UTI has nothing to do with any sexual activities, or does it?
The incidence of it, so one of the ways that is recommended to reduce your chance of getting it would be to void, as quickly as possible after intercourse. So it is not, in any way an STD, but if you can think about anything that it could possibly introduce any type of contaminants, bacterial components into the urethra is going to put you at risk. So, so that would be the correlation there. So that's why one of the sort of non-therapeutic, things you can do would be to try to avoid as quickly as possible after intercourse. So, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So the cranberry, right? We've got there, we're in the Northeast. Malcolm, you're over, on the West Coast, but there's so many parts of the world, particularly in the Northeast, there are cranberry bogs. They are sort of, I feel like it's a one time of year fruit. You mentioned it, Maxine, I feel like we see it just at Thanksgiving time. In cranberry sauce and such, but these cranberries, these little tiny powerhouses of nutrition, think about that beautiful color. It should tell you immediately, because we talk about fruits and veg with that incredible red, that purpley red color. So no surprise that cranberries are packed very rich in different phytochemicals. The one that you mentioned, which we're going to, from this point forward, we're going to refer to it as PAC because it does have a really long name. It's that proanthocyanidin, and it is a potent antioxidant. Ursolic acid, salicylic acid, phenolic acid, flavonoids. There's many, many powerful phytochemicals in cranberries that help reduce disease risk across the board. So we know that their nutritional value is great, but we're trying to tease apart that and its role in maybe reducing any incidence of UTIs.
Right.
So Joe, sorry, your question?
Yeah, they have, I know that they, cranberries themselves, can be eaten or whatever form it's going to be in, or juice, preferably not sweetened juice. They seem to, get away from that. But there's also the supplements, which I guess you can go into at some point, because I had a bout of UTIs and it was not being helped by the medications. It just was, it was really not a good thing. And they actually have specialists, gynecologists who specialize now for women in UTIs. This is new,
right?
Because usually they send you to a guy, a guy doc, and now it's getting more play because it seems to be something that's happening more often.
Right. So the research, the data we do have is strongest in that population you just spoke of, and that is in individuals, predominantly women, who have recurrent UTIs. Again, separate from treatment options. So let's work backwards a little bit to sort of what's the standing hypothesis. So this is not just an off the cuff, like let's just pick cranberries. There's been a plethora of research that has looked at cranberries over the decades about its role in UTI. So the working hypothesis, and I think you touched on this in your intro, Max, is that the cranberries work by preventing that adhesion of certain bacteria. And I will tell you that that bacteria is 90% of the time E. coli. It's not always the culprit, but most of the time it is. So it prevents that adhesion of bacteria strains to the urethra. So if you think about it, if there's no adhesion and the bacteria can't make a home, right, in that cozy sort of mucosal surface, it can't hang around long enough, or it won't hang around. It's going to pass out of the body. It can't infect you. So that's sort of the working hypothesis on how cranberry, or the compounds in cranberries, may be beneficial. I will tell you that it's always been a little unclear to researchers. Okay, how are cranberries absorbed? How are they metabolized? How is it excreted in the urine? So it's a little bit complex. So they still look at that in terms of, okay, we're really not super clear on how it hangs around long enough in the walls of the urethra to actually be helpful. But nonetheless, that's what the hypothesis is, and that's what the data seems to indicate. So there is a difference in the types of cranberries that would be most beneficial. So let's jump right to that. So there's certainly the juice, and I will tell you that it's pretty clear in the research that both juice and supplements, so cranberry extract, appear to be beneficial, again, in prevention. The data is very inconsistent, and you got to really work with that. So the FDA now is allowing certain cranberry products, including juices, to have sort of a health, remember, they're not allowed to have a health claim. So they can't say, take this, it will reduce your incidence of UTIs. So there's language that you're going to start to see that says, look, we've looked through this. And there seems to be, qualified research behind the usefulness of cranberry juice, but we're not giving it our 100% blessing. But that's a far cry from the FDA saying, look, you need to run away from this because there's no clear data. So I think it's beneficial both in the juice and in the extract form, where you are not going to get enough of the concentrated form, particularly of that pack that we talked about in the beginning,
right,
is in things like cranberry sauce, cranberry jellies, even dried cranberries. I love dried cranberries. Still throw them in your salads. They're a great snack with nuts. There's no reason, not to have them. But in terms of, are they going to be one of those cranberry sources that are going to help reduce risk of UTI, of you getting a UTI? It's not one of them. It's really either the juice or it's going to be the extract.
right. The juice is, there's when I was going through this bout of it and finally was able to get rid of it because the med finally worked, then the doctor gave me something about some cranberry supplements that would be good and they recommend, he goes, I can't guarantee anything, but I definitely recommend blah blah blah, and they're cranberry supplements. It's
I've heard good things about the blah blah blah, Max. I really have. So
good.
Do they have pills?
I don't know the name of it, but yeah, it's.
Do they have pills like they have vitamin pills?
It's pills, yeah.
They are, but here's the thing, and this is going to be so if you put 12 healthcare providers in a room right now, 6 of them, who I'm just coming up with an arbitrary number, would say, sure, give it a whirl. There's it's inconsistent data, but it's pretty good. There's no harm in it. And then you might have the other one saying, no way, it's snake oil. Just save your money. You're going to have very expensive pee, right? So I really think if you are experiencing recurrent UTIs, you've obviously met with your healthcare provider. They have no clear objection to you trying it. I do think either of these two options, either in the supplemental form or the juice form, and I'm going to give you guidelines for that. I think that those would be certainly open. Try it. Give it a whirl. Don't introduce anything else. What I mean by that is don't try probiotics. Don't try D-nanos. Don't try other things along with it. Truly narrow it down to, I've just added the cranberry. Let me see if it actually reduces my chance of getting a UTI, and go from there. For juices, you're looking for If you can handle it, the completely unsweetened
Ooh,
cranberry juice. There's lots of brands.
that's
It's a little
tough.
rough.
It's
If you've
rough.
never had
I've
it,
done it. I've done it. It's rough.
but remember, in terms of the amount, we're looking at, I mean, you comb through, all of the research. What they've come down to is the general serving size is about 1 cup each day. So that's 8 ounces. That's this. So if you can handle 8 ounces of the unsweetened, that would probably be the best case scenario for the juices. If not, you can have the ones that are sweetened, but I still want you to look for at least, and I will tell you, most of them are at least 25%, 27% cranberry juice, but it needs to have at least that amount. The label will tell you if there's that much cranberry juice in your product. So that's what you want to look for if you're not buying the 100% unsweetened cranberry juice.
They also have 100% with the little sweet as well. I mean, I have that, and I mix that with water.
Yeah.
So it's not quite a cup, and then I mix it even sometimes with black tea, but yeah, there are ways around it. But
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, you don't want it to necessarily, and it can't, what I would discourage is, don't buy like a mixed blend juice blend where cranberry juice is the last juice listed. And what I mean by that is, don't pick up one that has, pineapple, orange, apple, and then cranberry is the last one. To quote George Michael, the late great George Michael, if you're going to do it right. So just, have the real stuff, give it a whirl. That's if you're looking for the juices. So 8 ounces a day, look for at least 27% of cranberry juice in it. If you're going to go with the supplement route, you're going to want to look for cranberry extract at about, and if you look at some studies, it went as low as 200 milligrams a day, but generally 500 milligrams each day. The problem with the supplements is that, keep in mind, it's a little bit of buyer beware. So I wish I could say that pick up any old supplement that's out there, but unfortunately, as we've learned on these segments, not everything that's in supplements is what it's said on the label. So if you can find a brand that has third-party testing, so again, that would mean something like a USP seal on it, that at least to the consumer means, all right, it says cranberry extract and it says 500 milligrams, that's what's in there. So
is there a reason that some people are more susceptible to the UTI? Given everything being equal and people will be exposed to the same amount, would one person get UTI and the other person not get UTI? Is there something in their body that prevents them from getting it?
It's a little bit unknown, but so there is a genetic component to it. So there's genes we're looking at. There is a little bit of, and when I mean hygiene, I mean that the fact of the matter is, if you're, and this is disgusting, I'm sorry if anybody's eating, but how do you wipe? This is another reason why women get into a little bit of trouble, because, for men, it's a one-way process. For women, it's a two-way street. So you can introduce bacteria that way. So if you are somebody who's a fastidious wiper and you are continually going front to back as opposed to back to front, you are going to be at lower risk because you're not introducing any bacteria. So that would be, sort of one incidence there. What's your hydration status like? And I know that the data here is, generally there's no downside to staying well hydrated and drinking enough water. So I'm just going to flatly say that. So even if there's a study that says, no, we looked at it and water doesn't seem to play a role in preventing UTIs, stay well hydrated and drink your water. Too many reasons. If you have a full bladder and you're holding your urine for too long, and this is sometimes what we see in residents of facilities later in life, like older adults. First of all, their thirst mechanism is a little altered. It just happens with age, and they're not going to the bathroom as frequently. And that in and of itself creates an environment, because if you think about it, the urine is being held in the bladder and possibly a little bit in the urethra. If there's bacteria in there, that bacteria has a chance to really grow if it's not, as opposed to somebody who's urinating more frequently. So yeah, Malcolm, there's a lot of reasons why folks might be at greater risk. That doesn't help them much. they can start to do some of these changes. But even if they try everything, they may still be somebody who has recurrent UTIs. But there's a lot of things you can do to certainly reduce that risk. I do think either the supplement or the juice is definitely an option. Interestingly enough, because I always throw in sort of my my how's this going to cost? What are is this going to be achievable for everybody, right? Feasible for everybody. And there was at least one study that showed that the juice was actually more expensive than the supplement. Now, that was one study, so I got to be fair. One study out of dozens.
One study's, that you kind of.
It doesn't mean much,
right?
But so I would say cost compare. Cranberry juice now, even the unsweetened ones, is much more widely available now than it was, a decade ago or 15 years ago. So I think that because there's more of it on the market, it brings the cost down. So I think that I think that study actually was from 2017. So even that is years ago.
Oh.
So I would just say price compare.
It's Ocean Spray that has the major market, and then there's brands.
I want to say Kutson's Nuts. It begins with a K. K-N-U-D.
Knudsen, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
Knudsen.
That's out in it. That's Knudsen, right? Knudsen. It's out in also a lot. I remember seeing that first in Los Angeles, actually, at Ralph's or somewhere. I don't know. I love that Ralph's.
Is that the only fruit that's good for you? I mean, good for the UTI? Or are there any other type of natural foods?
It appears to be the only fruit with that very high concentration that seems to do the trick. So again, I'd have to like look through the research to see if maybe, and I'm making this up, by the way. I don't know if the acai berry has that concentration of PAC in it, that pro-anthocyanidin that we're talking about. So, but there seems to be something very special and very unique about the cranberry, which is why it appears that it's part of all of these research studies. So consistency is going to be best. So it's not the kind of thing, well, I'll take a glass of juice, my cup today, and then you wait several days later. It has to build up. And so it has to be something you commit to see if it actually works for you or not. I will say that. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. What about because I was looking at different things.
Yeah.
Probiotics, garlic, vitamin C. Those things were listed in different articles. I don't know if any of those things are things you can try. I don't know.
So I think after cranberry, if you look through sort of the meta-analysis, which is just a fancy word for we're going to comb through, a lot of research everywhere and net down the results for you. So that's what that means. So this is not necessarily new research studies designed. This is a comb through of everything. But the meta-analysis has really come to sort of the conclusion about cranberry juice. There appears to be some good clinical research with regard to something called D-mannose, which is a monosaccharide, a simple sugar, and with regard to probiotics, so in particular lactobacillus. So again, that's what I'm saying. Don't try everything at once. If I'm working with a client, I'm always like, if you throw everything into your mix, you don't know what's working. So give each one a chance. I certainly would go with the cranberry first to see if it's helpful. You will, and just a word about the D-mannose. If you're going to buy the supplement, just apropos this, make sure you're trying one thing at a time. Look for the supplement that only has cranberry in it. Don't choose one that has D-mannose in it, because if you do, you don't know which of those compounds is giving you the best results. So so those would be the two others that seem to have some decent data. Again, very, very, very mixed. And then vitamin C is a distant one behind. But we should all be having decent amounts of vitamin C, on a regular basis.
On the opposite end of this, is there any foods or things that you shouldn't take or do if you have a UTI?
There really doesn't seem to be any one food culprit. It really isn't. I'm sure that having a highly processed diet with a lot of sugar in it is probably not going to help. But there really is nothing specific about a food that at least I'm aware of in the research. One more thing about sort of process, if you're an exerciser, and hopefully you are an exerciser, if you anything that can trap moisture and bacteria. So remember that saying, where water does not flow, bacteria will grow. I love that. I learned that in grad school and that stuck with me forever. If you're exercising and you're sweating a lot, okay, you're going to want to get out of those clothes as quickly as possible after your workout. Don't hang out in clothing that is going to continually keep moisture down in that area. It's certainly not going to help the situation. So I forgot to mention that, but it's important to mention that as well. It's an easy tip
interesting.
that most people can do.
Yeah, because a lot of times in the gym, everyone's sweating and then they decide to talk. It's like,
well, you're okay. Don't get me wrong. You don't need to drop trowel right after you figure your workout. But I mean,
why not?
Don't hang out for 8 hours at home and
Yeah, right.
like tights, right? So,
right.
And then I just also want to mention before we wrap up, and it's sort of a side note, but important to mention, and it's really more of a risk with the supplements and not so much with the juice, and that's with regard to oxalates. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that. It's an anti-nutrient. Oxalates are found in a variety of different foods. Beets, cranberries happen to be one of them. So if you are somebody who is prone to kidney stones, for example, we know that oxalates can worsen the situation, either worsen a stone that you already have or contribute to kidney stones. So you want to really watch the amount of oxalates in your diet. So it is really hard to get to a really large amount of oxalates in 1 cup of cranberry juice, but it may be a little bit more problematic and easier to get to that high level of oxalates in a supplement. So if you fall into that category of somebody who is prone to kidney stones, and you do have to watch the oxalates in your diet, I would probably recommend that you go with the juice option as opposed to the supplement option.
Right. Just keep thinking Blue Zone and what they do.
I know.
And the simple things, and how they eat, just simply and nutritionally, and that's the best way. But here in the US, we go off onto different directions.
Right.
But but cranberries are good. I love cranberry. I love cranberry juice. I love cranberry, homemade cranberry sauce. It's all good. I like tart stuff. So when you said
before
beets,
anybody asks, because I feel like I'll get some kind of correspondence from somebody, and they'll say, what about can my 1 cup of cranberry be accompanied by a 1 ounce of vodka and make a nice So
yeah, why not a nice summer cocktail?
There are no judgments here in what you drink. However, if you are trying to reduce your risk of UTIs, I would say just go
leave the vodka out of it for now. Yeah.
Now the question is it communicable? I mean, if you're having sex or intercourse with a partner that has UTI, can they give that to you?
No, because it's further up. It's up in the urethra, and then and then I really want to make sure we talk about the other side. So no, it is not. It's not like a sexually transmitted disease in that way. However, so what we spoke about was really for prevention of recurrent UTIs. Really, really important. If you have been or you feel like you have a UTI, it is super important that this is not going to work for that. Okay, don't say and I see this a lot. It's like, I feel I have a UTI, I'm going to go buy cranberry juice. The damage has been done, right? So do the work to prevent it. But if you have a UTI, you think you have a UTI, see your healthcare provider. Many times they're going to need to do a culture to see what type of bacteria it is. So if they are going to give you an antibiotic, the antibiotic matches the strain of bacteria that you have. So it's really important. You don't want to go long term with a UTI without being treated. Will it go away on its own? Maybe. And I think a lot of healthcare providers are trying to think outside the box to preserve our antibiotic strength and not overprescribing. But the reality is it is the gold, it is the standard for UTIs. So there may be an option without it, but let your healthcare provider and you together make that decision, but don't operate in a bubble. Make sure you get looked at by a provider.
Yeah, it's important because again, people think, oh, it'll go away, and it won't unless if you have it and they take a culture and see where they can match the antibiotic. It's important. Otherwise, you're going to be miserable. So we don't want miserable. So,
Guys, we have a minute left to wrap
we
it
hit
up.
the minute. I'm
All
going to
right,
wrap
Max,
it.
there it is.
There it is. There I go. What can I say? So, of course, thanks for joining us for Courtney on Health. To get more info, follow Courtney on her Facebook page, which is Courtney on Health, on Instagram and TikTok at CLG Wellness. Visit her website, CourtneyGravities.com. For past shows, go to MalcolmPresents.com and theManyShadesOfGreen.com. This has been Courtney on Health. You know the tag. Smart Sound Nutrition, Strong Safe Fitness. We'll catch you next time and enjoy.
Yeah, and remember, you're listening to this on MalcolmPresents.com.
Right.
As well as you can go to our website and get other shows.
Right, and you could also find it in podcasts too.
Yeah,
so
and get many shades of green.
ManyShadesOfGreen.com. Yeah, we're plugging everything right now.
or Tush Twins that we do.
Drink your cranberry juice, kids.
Tush Twins that we do tomorrow.
Right. All right, guys.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, Courtney. Thanks, Max.
Take
See
care.
you next week.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.